Ever spent weeks defining scope and still felt unsure? Or wondered if PMs should be risk firefighters or risk architects? Today, I'm answering two brilliant questions and then diving into the soft skills that separate good PMs from great ones. Hi everyone, it's Dave here and welcome back to Project Management 101. With over 15 years experience in software and IT delivery here in the UK, I break down project management into clear practical advice you can actually use. So like I mentioned at the start, today we're going to be answering some questions which subscribers asked recently. Thanks so much for asking, guys. It really helps the channel. Do please keep the questions coming. A subscriber asked in the comments of my scope breakdown video, how do you avoid analysis paralysis and spending too long defining scope in a really large project? I think to help answer that, here's some ideas that I'd use to help avoid getting stuck in the loop of endless scope refinement. So one idea could be using progressive scope elaboration, i.e. let's break down what we need right now versus what we need in the future, and this just helps to give us a roadmap of the scope definition that we need and allows us to get started. You could also consider time boxing the scope refinement stage. You could focus on the minimum viable product, so the MVP, and the critical path elements first, get those defined before then moving into defining other elements of the work that's required. That's similar to some of the approaches that we talked about above. Equally, you could use your project sponsor versus your project stakeholders to ensure that you're delivering what the overall aim of the project is without lots of external noise and lots of additional asks which maybe aren't necessary when you're trying to define the actual scope. To help with this, you could consider making it a very transparent discussion in somewhere like a project board or a program board or a project steering group. There's a soft skill overlay here as well. Facilitation is key. Knowing when to gather consensus versus make a call and actually make a decision and therefore move to a baseline position are really important. So using all of the steps that we've just talked about will allow us to avoid getting stuck in that endless scope loop on a really large project. I'd like to apologise for any background noise if you're picking it up in the video. My next door neighbours are having a new roof fitted on the house, which is great for them. Sadly, it's a little bit noisy here in the studio. Hopefully it's not affecting it too much. We should be back to normal for next week. So the second question that I got asked was around whether project managers need to be proactive. What a great question. The individual that asked me this question asked me it in this way. I'll play it back here because I thought it was a great way to ask the question. If the project manager was a stable hand in a ranch and they were asked to make sure the horses had been fed and watered, if the stable hand, the project manager, simply walked up to the horses and said, I think you need a drink, guys, why don't you have a drink? And they continued to not have a drink, what should they do about it? Would you expect them to A, take the horse by the reins, lead them to the water and maybe let them have the time to have a drink? Or would you go and seek out the leadership team of the ranch and just let them know that the horses didn't have a drink when you asked them to? I thought this was a great way to describe the scenario. I think to answer that for all of us, I think proactivity is absolutely key and a core fundamental for being a project manager. With that, I'd expect escalation to be the exception in every scenario, and I'd look for the project manager and I'd support the project manager to be managing as many of those issues, risks and dependencies in advance of them turning into issues, and therefore escalation becomes less frequent and the project manager has a much better control system, if you like, across the project and delivery of the project. I think there's a soft skills overlay here. Empathy and foresight. Understanding how risks, issues and dependencies impact the people, not just the plans. Like I said at the beginning, it's really great that I've been able to answer some questions that have been asked within our community. So do keep them coming. It really means a lot to me. Thank you. So up next, we're going to dive into some soft skills. These are really important for all project managers, irrelevant where you are on your career path. So the first one I want to cover is understanding people and situations, as after all, people are projects. I think it's important to understand that as a project manager, you play a role as part therapist, part translator. I think it's important that we read between the lines and adapt communication styles in every interaction, whether that's with a stakeholder or with our project team. Also, building solid relationships with wider delivery teams and partners with empathy is really important to support a cohesive and collaborative team environment and culture. So the second soft skill that I want to talk about is getting the team on board and motivated. This one's really important, especially early in a project, but you continually need to tweak it throughout the project to make sure that everybody's on the same page and everybody's committed to the same outcomes. I like to think of this as you're not the engine here, you're the ignition. How do you ignite that spark and help everybody to come together? For me, it's about creating a culture that sits around that shared purpose, celebrating small wins and removing friction when it occurs. Fun, fun, fun. This is key. I think work can be fun, and it's really important. As you're the spark, you're also the person that can carve out some time and bring some fun. Spend some time doing some silly icebreakers that everybody will hate. At least you'll have a bit of a laugh. I think it's important to think about psychology as well as you bring in groups of people together. I'm lucky enough to have 3 children with my beautiful wife. We spend time going to kids' birthday parties, as I'm sure other parents do. I think one thing that I observed within that space was the psychology and behaviour of the children as they come together. What I always noticed at those birthday parties is, as we arrived, all the children would go off in their separate little friendship groups. They'd play for an hour or so, and then it would be time to have, the pizza or the chicken nuggets or whatever the food was. And all the children would come together, sit at long benches, eat together. I always observed, as they then left from the part where they'd eaten, they'd go off together in much bigger groups, and they created a better bond by eating together. So maybe you can employ that as you're pulling your teams together, as that's got a clear sense of psychology that underpins it. I'm always fascinated by that. So the third soft skill I want to talk about is organisational skills. I think the way to think about this is you're the air traffic controller, keeping the planes, i.e. the tasks, from colliding, landing them in the right order, and rerouting them if a storm hits. I think within this, there's prioritisation, time management, and information hygiene. These are all really important and something that a project manager brings to the table for the rest of the team. So the fourth soft skill I want to talk about is conflict resolution. I like to think of this, that project managers are the pressure valves within the overall environment. I think the project manager has to use the skills to help mediate, facilitate, and if necessary, escalate situations that are harming the team, growing together, and ultimately harm the project. I think it's important as a project manager that you recognise when you need to do each of those, whether it's to mediate a situation, facilitate a shared resolution, or escalate. Don't always just go to escalate, as that's not helpful, and it won't help you to grow your own skills in working with people in tough situations. So the fifth soft skill is stakeholder empathy. I like to think of this, that we, as project managers, are the translator between business needs and project reality. I think as a project manager, I love to hear what is the outcome that we're trying to achieve, and that generally sits behind the ask, and it's really important that you ask that of your stakeholders or the project sponsor to ensure that you're clear on what the outcome is. And that way you won't get bogged down in somebody else's idea around what a potential solution could be, because we all have an idea of solutions, and you'll notice in any business, everybody goes to solution rather than starting with what's our problem statement perhaps, and then what's the outcome that we're aiming to achieve. There could be 10 different paths to get to that outcome. So that's a great skill to learn and to have and to navigate with your stakeholders and your project sponsors. Number 6 is adaptability. Think of it that you're the GPS system in a car, recalculating the route changes as you're driving along the road. It's important that the project manager helps the team to pivot without panic when a situation arises, and sometimes embracing change is part of the job. Now, we're not talking about project change control here, but actually the change in delivery. As we go through a project, when we bump into an issue, we might have to change the way that we've approached the situation, or just deal with a little bit of change within the team, ultimately the project manager sets the tone for that. It's really important that you set a clear panic-free zone so everybody else can concentrate on finding the solution to whatever the issue is that popped up in front of you. Number 7 is influence without authority. Imagine you're the conductor of a volunteer orchestra. You need to build trust, earn credibility, and lead through clarity, building strong relationships with all of those that you'll work alongside. So number 8 is time sensitivity and prioritization. I touched on this a little bit earlier. I think it's worth thinking of this, that we're juggling flaming torches rather than tennis balls. I think the important soft skill that we're pulling out here for a project manager is helping the team. And that's helping the team to distinguish the urgent work versus the important work. Within that, using the plan, using the insight that you have from tools like work breakdown structure, the critical path of the project will help the team to focus on what's important right now, understanding those lead times. And if we reflect on the project organisational skills video that I did a little bit earlier in the series, there's some great tips for thinking about those things. I'll pop a link up in the corner of the video. Please do go and watch it if you haven't watched it yet. It will really help you understand some different tools that you can use to help with that prioritisation and time sensitivity. Number 9 is emotional intelligence. I like to think of this that you're the team thermostat, not the thermometer. I think it's really important that you set the tone, you regulate your own reactions. If somebody's going to tell you that there's an issue with the project, you don't react with chaos and panic, you react with calmness, steps to understand, steps to move forward, and understand a gentle path forwards, which allows people to not feel blamed, but really sets a tone of a culture of inclusivity and psychological safety. I think it's also important to read the room. There's times where actually saying nothing or just saying I understand adds much more value and weight than coming up with a solution and panicking and trying to find an answer in the meeting. Sometimes stepping away from a situation, just having a bit of time to reflect on it, will allow you to come back with a better plan or some steps to move forwards in maybe less of an emotionally reactive state. Number 10 is coaching and mentoring. This is one of my favourite parts of the job. I like to think of this as you're the climbing guide, not the rescue helicopter. I think as a project manager, it's really important to create space for growth within the team and the project team. I think it's really important that we ask more than we tell people to do things. That's not my style anyway. And I think it's a great skill to have to understand what people are trying to achieve within the team, within the project, within their longer careers. And they can come out of things like one-to-ones with all of the team members. And then you can help to ask the team members how they'd like to gain some opportunities within the project that you're delivering, and you can carve out small spaces to allow them to move towards their overall goal. That's really great for continuing to build that culture of continuous learning for everybody. And then the final soft skill that I wanted to call out just for this video is number 11, and that's communication. I like to think of this that you're the team's loudhailer, shouting about their successes, quiet about the issues, unless it's to the stakeholders or people that need to help. But we don't need to publicly shame. We definitely need to publicly praise, but equally we need to communicate not only to the external teams, but also to our internal teams. So making sure that everybody's clear where we are from a plan perspective, knowing if we've got issues, creating a culture where people come together and have a great conversation, talk about those updates, and just be really upfront if they're running into issues, so we can all pull together a mini action plan to solve those issues. Or if it's going great, let's do some reward and recognition. Let's find some time to build some more culture and come together as a team much better. So communication is the thing that underpins all of the foundations of the project, and it's a great way of bringing everybody together. So in this video, we've managed to cover answering 2 key questions from our subscribers. Again, thanks so much, guys, for asking the questions. We've called out 11 core soft skills, which are great for project managers to know and to work on. If you've got any questions, please do drop me a comment below. Let me know, and I'll try and get it answered as quickly as possible. We might even dive into a video for it. As always, I'd love it if you would hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed. From what I can see, 90% of my viewers are currently unsubscribed, so it'd be great and it really helps out the channel. So please do click that subscribe button. Next week, we'll be talking about how you can get into project management. If you're not already a project manager and perhaps you're not even qualified, we can talk about how you can tailor your CV. We can talk about how you can move yourself towards the goal that you're trying to achieve and the different steps and paths that you can take to get you there. Make sure you tune in for that one. It's going to be great. It's been great to see you again. So that's all for this week. From chaos to clarity. I'll see you next time. Take care.